Mold or mycotoxin exposure can ignite past trauma, past thoughts, past memories, those dark feelings that you had. It can make you start to have them all over again or make them even worse. I went through this myself personally. I've seen my clients go through this. So I want to go over it in this video. First, let me say I'm not a medical doctor. This is not medical advice. It's based on my 22 years of experience in my own healing my daughter, working with clients. And this is for informational and educational purposes only. So back to mold and mycotoxins. How can they ignite past trauma? How can mold or mycotoxins make you start thinking about things that you don't want to think about? Well, when you inhale mold or mycotoxins through your nasal cavity, you start having inflammation in your neurological system right here in the front of your head. And your limbic system gets dysregulated. This is the part of your brain that is responsible for processing emotions and processing fear and threat and things like that. So you start to have these uncontrollable fears, threats, and you start to think about things that happened in the past that you just weren't thinking about as often. And you wonder yourself, why? Why is this happening? And, why am I thinking about these things so much? And I was stuck in these loops and I didn't realize, and to the end, it was black mold that was in the house that I was living in. My daughter was extremely sick at the time. I wasn't feeling extremely well. I was relatively normal, but I was still not feeling 100%. And I was just wiped out from these traumatic thoughts that kept coming in and these feelings that kept coming in. And I didn't know what it was. Of course, everybody points to themselves or they go try to get them medication to resolve it or whatever it is. But I didn't realize it was actually because there's neurological inflammation that happens. When your brain starts to swell and there's inflammation occurs, then you start having neurotransmitters that go up and down and left and right and blah, blah, blah. The neurotransmitters are just thrown off completely. And you start to have issues, start to have issues with the way you're thinking. And then everything just looks different. And a lot of people buy into like these mental health conditions. Oh, I've got depression, I got anxiety, I got, PTSD, like I thought, I had PTSD, right? But often it was this trauma that occurred combined with this environmental circumstance that was inflaming my brain, that was leading me to hyperfixate on this thing over and over again. So the mold played a big role. I was diagnosed with ADHD, depression, PTSD, these things. But these things all got significantly better once I got out of the mold and I started to implement deep breathing and meditation. I started to get out of the hypervigilant state of the nervous system, but I couldn't get out of that state when I was still living in mold. I tried, but I just couldn't. I tried my breathing, my meditations, and they just wouldn't stick. It just wouldn't work. I would keep feeling the same way. So you have to combine your deep breathing, your meditations up to 30 minutes to an hour per day, the stretching, the self-care activities. You got to combine that with the right environment. If you're still living in a place where you're inhaling black mold, you're inhaling a mold that you become sensitive to, mycotoxins that you become sensitive to, then you're going to be stuck in this perpetual cycle of mental health, and you're going to have to constantly be seeking some type of medication, supplement, whatever, to relieve yourself. But it's not going to resolve the issue because the underlying irritant is what you're inhaling. This is the story that was, I've seen in hundreds of people, and it's what my life story was. My daughter, her behavioral issues, these things all were tied to what we're inhaling. Her inability to process, remember, develop as a young child, all tied to what we were inhaling. So don't discount this, everybody. It's legitimate, and what you're inhaling is one of the most important parts to what you're thinking and how you're feeling. If you have questions, go to my website, endsickness.org. I got hundreds of articles, hundreds of videos in there teaching you how to heal yourself. Take care.